Hey everybody, you're looking at the Samsung Galaxy A80. So as you can see right away, this phone doesn't have a hole punch display or a notch. The reason for that is because it has a pop-up camera, just like the Oppo Find X. Now this isn't any ordinary pop-up camera. As you can see, it has two moving parts. The camera not only elevates, but it also flips forward. That's because this phone does not have a dedicated selfie camera. Instead, it uses the main camera module on the back to also shoot selfies. That's kind of ingenious if you think about it, although it does add one more moving part that can go wrong. So in terms of the main camera module, you're looking at a 48 megapixel main camera with an f2.0 aperture. And then you have a secondary 8 megapixel wide angle lens and then a TOF sensor. So the TOF sensor will help you take bokeh images that are more accurate than a traditional depth sensor, and on top of that, this is also a selfie camera, so you should be able to get some really good bokeh selfies with this camera. Now I am dubious about that 48 megapixel main sensor because that's the Samsung sensor we're using and it's not as good as the Sony sensor that we've seen in other phones such as the Honor View 20. So yeah, that 6.7 inch display looks great. It is a Samsung AMOLED panel with a resolution of 1080 by 2400, so it's a little bit more than 1080p. In terms of processor, this phone specifically runs on a Snapdragon 730, and then there's a 3700 milliamp hour battery inside. You also have an in-display fingerprint reader too, and for my testing, it works relatively well. So the camera app, it's very similar to the main S10 app. You have a wide angle lens, you have a toggle for wide angle and main camera, and you cycle through the different shooting modes left and right, and then you go into selfie camera, same thing, pretty standard setup, except you're shooting with a camera module that's meant to be the main camera module. You should be able to get some good selfies. Now the screen looks great. Like I said, it's a Samsung AMOLED panel. There's a single bottom fine speaker though, so sound's not that impressive. That's about all I have right now for the Samsung Galaxy A80. That's because Samsung did not let me borrow a unit to test thoroughly, so all I got was about like 2-3 minutes of hands-on time right here at the booth. Instead, what they did was they let me borrow this phone. This is the Samsung Galaxy A70, and it's very similar to the A80, except obviously it has a notch, so there is no pop-up camera here. It might actually be a blessing in disguise because a pop-up camera, no matter how sturdy it is more susceptible to damage. Now I have to say, Samsung has been poking fun, talking trash about Apple's notch ever since the iPhone X came out. They ran all these commercials with the dude with the hairline notch. It's pretty funny, but where I come from, if you talk shit, you better not then do that same thing later. So unfortunately, I'm disappointed to see that Samsung is indeed going with a notch right here. Obviously, this is not as big a notch as on the iPhone, but this is still a notch. The same thing that Samsung poked fun at Apple for doing. So other than that, there's a lot to like with the Samsung Galaxy A70 because it's very similar to the A80. You have the exact same screen, so the same AMOLED panel, the exact same in-display fingerprint sensor. But the main camera now, instead of that 48 megapixel sensor, it's only a 32 megapixel sensor. I feel ridiculous saying only 32 megapixel, but it is what it is. And on top of that, this phone does not have that TOF sensor. So instead, this third camera is just a 5 megapixel depth sensor. So it's a pretty basic depth sensing setup that you see on like budget Chinese phones. The processor is also weaker. This phone runs on a Snapdragon 675 instead of the 730. But performance wise, you're not going to see much difference, with the only exception being the 675 cannot shoot 4K videos, so this phone can only shoot videos up to 1080p resolution. But the silver lining is the battery size has been increased dramatically. So this phone has a 4500 milliamp hour battery, 4500. That is freaking huge. It is the biggest battery in any mainstream phone right now, so this phone will definitely last you all day. Now in terms of performance, I haven't had much time to test this phone, but I'm not expecting any performance issues. I mean, the Snapdragon 675 with 6 gigs or 8 gigs of RAM in there depending on your configuration, so it should run very smoothly. So I also want to add that this phone is a mid-tier device, so it doesn't feel as nice as the Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus, but it feels a little bit better than typical mid-tier or budget Chinese phones, such as the Realme phones or Umi Digi or Vivo V15. So this is something I notice a lot in budget mid-tier phones. The display panel is completely flat and it'll kind of sharp right here in the corner, whereas when you use a flagship phone like an LG G8 or iPhone X, it curves right here too. So I'm happy to report that on the Samsung Galaxy A70, this part right here, it's not that abrupt, it's not that jarring. I mean, you can still feel a little rough edge here, but it's not that bad. Not as bad as, like, say, any Oppo phone, any OnePlus phone, or this one, the Umi Digi S3 Pro. This phone's really nice, but at the same time, when I run my finger through right here, I can feel the edge. It's kind of abrupt right here. I noticed this problem in, like I said, every mid-tier Chinese phone. So on the Xiaomi Mi 9, it has this. Xiaomi Mi Mix 3, Realme 3, it has it. Oppo R17 Pro, OnePlus 6T, they all have this little sharp edge. So kudos to Samsung for at least smoothing it out a little bit. So for a mid-tier device, this is really well built. And even the power button, Samsung has put the power button at a more sensible location, because you remember the Galaxy S10, the power button, it's like all the way up here, which was kind of stupid. So this power button's a little bit easier to reach, but now the fingerprint sensor is a little bit high. But you know, not much complaints. So like I said, I only had a brief time with this phone so far. I'm excited to try it out. I'm actually going to Korea in 2 days, so I will be taking this phone with me to Korea. So I'll be testing this phone back in its motherland. So I didn't really get to test the camera of the A80, but I got to play with the A70 a little bit already, and it's looking pretty good. Like about on par with a mid-tier device. This is a bokeh shot, so you check out edge detection is on point, and the depth of field, it's very natural. And I think video recording seems relatively stable. You can only record up to 1080p as I mentioned, so no 4K. And colors are looking a little bit dull, but we'll see if there's stabilization, because I'm about to walk right now. Okay, no stabilization. You see, that's quite jerky. Okay, so in terms of video recording, this is definitely a couple levels below what the Samsung Galaxy S10 it's capable of. But in terms of still cameras, it looks good. That wide angle lens really add a lot of perspective. So this is a normal shot, and then now you have a wide angle shot. You see how much more you get into the frame. Should be a pretty impressive still camera. Alright, you know what we gotta do? We gotta do a video speaker test. So here goes. So we'll start at 50%. So bottom fine speaker. We'll go up to max. For a single bottom fine speaker, it's pretty good. Max volume is pretty loud, although you can muffle it very easily. I do wish sound would come out here, but this is a mid-tier or budget device from Samsung, so I guess you can expect all that. So that's it for now for the quick look at the Samsung Galaxy A80 and the A70. And like I said, I have a bunch of other phones on me right now, including the Umi Digi S3 Pro. So if you're interested in following these phones and just keeping up to date with the newest Chinese releases, please subscribe to my channel. I'm going to be checking out the Oppo Reno in about like 8 days too. So that's it for now. Thanks for watching.